Let's take a tour of viewport rendering levels. But before we get going, I'd like to talk about renderers. Everything you make in the program is a mathematical description of an object. What shows it to you on the screen or in your output is a renderer. It renders that description visible. We're looking at the interactive viewport renderer in the viewport right now. And that's different than a final output renderer like the scanline, radiosity, or mental ray renderers. The interactive viewport renderer, or IVR for short, has to take shortcuts because it has to display this information to you in real time as you're working. You can access the different rendering levels for the IVR in the viewport menu. Right-click on the viewport title, and the first two rendering levels are listed here: Smooth and Highlights and Wireframe. These are the most commonly used. I'll go to Wireframe, and you can quickly toggle between these two levels by pressing the F3 key. I'll go back to the viewport menu and turn on Edged Faces. This is like the best of both worlds. It superimposes the wireframe on top of the shaded view. You can toggle Edged Faces mode on and off with the F4 key. There are other rendering levels that you can choose from, and they're not commonly used. But it's good to go through them while you're learning because it will illustrate some important concepts in computer graphics. They're listed in order of their sophistication, smooth being the most sophisticated and bounding box the most primitive. Bounding box doesn't even try to display the geometry itself. It just shows you a box containing the volume of that object. I use bounding box mode in extremely large scenes when it's a chore just to move around in the scene. Bounding box mode always displays quickly with minimal information. And you can kind of get a sense of where you are with bounding box mode if you're familiar with the model. Lit wireframes displays a little bit of lighting information on the wireframe itself, and you can see this more in the teapot. Flat mode doesn't attempt to give you gradations in lighting. It just illuminates everything with full intensity. If you turn on Edged Faces mode, and I'm pressing F4, it makes this mode more workable. Facets mode takes the geometry of your scene literally and just shows you the actual planar facets that make up your model. This is really obvious on the teapot. Facets plus highlights add some specular reflection to the shiny parts of your objects. It makes them just a little bit more realistic. Smooths out those facets and blends them together and gives you this illusion of curvature. And finally, Smooth and Highlights is the best of all the rendering levels. You can also turn on Transparency. It's set to Simple by default. And sometimes Best will give you a slightly better look. It's good to know you can also turn off Transparency globally in the viewport by setting Transparency to None.